Hope everyone had a great Independence Day weekend. I know I did. Had a lot of fun out with the family here this weekend, and now we are back at it today in the office for a little bit, and then I got to go to North Carolina here here soon. So that's why we needed to do this webinar first thing versus waiting it all. There are still a lot of people coming in, so maybe we'll wait just another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get going. Thanks everyone for getting on here right away Monday morning. Know there's a lot of people that, of course, are maybe going to work and whatnot this morning as well and missing out. This will be recorded and available later, or if any of you have to jump off. All right, there's still a lot of people coming in, but we will need to get going here. So maybe we do, and we'll let people get caught up if they're still coming in. So. Thanks for coming to our emergency webinar, a little seminar here this morning. Some major things happening in regards to 45Z, uh, tied in with last week's signing and passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill. Wide array of different things, of course, that the bill did, but the biggest thing from our side, or that we're talking about here today, not the biggest thing, the whole thing, but big thing that we're talking about today is 45Z. And 45Z is a biofuel producer tax credit. Hopefully, you're familiar with it. If you're not familiar with the basics of the bill, you can go to any of Continuum Ag's social media pages or our website, continuum.ag, or our YouTube page. We have a tremendous amount of material out there about 45Z. For those that may not know me, I'm Mitchell. I'm a seventh generation farmer. I'm the founder and CEO here at Continuum Ag. I started this company back in 2015, and we have been working diligently on the 45Z program for the last north of 2.5 years. That we've been really preparing our software systems for 45Z, making connections with farmers and biofuel producers to make sure that this program can really be capitalized on. We think it is a massive deal, and we got some big wins with 45Z last week, and excited to talk about those here today. Continuum Ag is based in Southeast Iowa, and I'm seventh generation on my family's farm. And I started all this stuff because when I saw the 45Z program come about in the Inflation Reduction Act, it was the light bulb moment for me that my family had not necessarily been able to really maximize carbon programs or participate in different carbon credit programs. But this 45Z deal could be absolutely game changing for my family's farm. And I think it will be game changing for other family farms across the country. And I think it's going to have a ripple effect that could change global agriculture. So that's why I'm just so adamant that we have got to get this right. We've got to hit the ground running as this program goes. So, some of the latest here, because I got a bunch of material about the base of the program and how 45Z works and the scoring and the financial system and stuff. We can't go into all of those details here today. We need to hit on some of the updates. My plan here is I've got a couple slides about what happened within last week's passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill and some of the key 45Z changes. We'll hit on that. Just some brief stuff then on impact of 45Z and what is to come next here. If you're a farmer, an ag supply chain company, and biofuel producer, wanting to hit on some of that stuff. Plenty of time here to take questions. And we will end at 9 o'clock because I've got to go catch a flight, or else I would love to hang out and talk more, but happy to take more questions later. Use the Q&A function or the chat. I've got them both pulled up, and I'll try to get to as many questions as I can. But without further ado, let's dig in. So, last week, of course, the Big Beautiful Bill was signed into law. It's been a lot of back and forth on some of the provisions within 45Z, really over the last month and a half that we first saw some of the material coming out of the House, and then some changes being made in the Senate. And then, of course, last week things getting really shored up. And here's what happened. So a key one is that the 45Z program was, of course, locked into the Big Beautiful Bill. That's number one. They cut almost all of the other, green funding programs within the Inflation Reduction Act. They cut a bunch of that old stuff, but they kept the 45Z program. So number one, that's the big win is farmers and biofuel producers, we were protected and kept in this program from our elected officials. And I know there was a number of key champions pushing to ensure that this was saved. A lot of our Iowa delegation here, we've been in communication with them, and I know they're really fighting for us. So I want to thank our Iowa delegation and many others who kept 45Z in. Not only did we keep 45Z, but 45Z actually got extended by a couple years. Maybe it'll get extended further in the future. I don't know, but regardless, it's alive. It's locked in. It is going to happen. It is now locked in with this program. I locked in through 2029. It could be extended later. So that is critical because, of course, we're already halfway through 2025. Previously, it was due to end at the end of 2027. We really didn't have a whole lot of time frame left, but now by giving a couple extra years, that allows bigger investment. If you're looking at doing a carbon capture program, combined heat and power, or some of these other infrastructure changes that take a lot of cash and need more payback, having a further time frame here and more runway is really critical for that. It could be extended later, and I think also by giving more time, it's going to allow for the ripple effect to really take place. That 45Z is setting a precedent that I think is going to change global agriculture by showing here's how you can score farmers' carbon footprint, here's how you can audit it, score it, verify it, track it through the supply chain, how to monetize it, what's the value that farmers bring to the table. And so the more time that we've got in this program, the bigger the ripple effect that the program can have. So extension, big deal. Keep in mind, since it's still is in effect for this calendar year that we are in, the 2024 crop, which is going into 2025 biofuel, that is still at play. So for farmers, we really need to be thinking about 2024 crop all the way through 2029. And biofuel producers, they now have more time to really capitalize on this, but it's underway right now. So big wins there. Of course, we needed to get the program off the ground and then get it extended. There was some talk about extension to 2031. It got whittled back a little bit to 2029. Again, that conversation could always come back up and resurface later on. So getting the thing started, that's number one. There was a lot of talk about where to draw the line when it comes to the feedstock. Where the line was drawn is that it's North American feedstock only, meaning North American corn, soybeans, used cooking oil, beef tallow, canola, whatever you're going to be making your biofuel out of, it's got to be from North America all the way through the extent of that feedstock. So in the previous versions, there was no rules really about it. There was no limitation to foreign feedstocks, and but where they settled is North American feedstock only. There was chatter about a reduced value for foreign feedstock, but they got rid of all that and just drew the line in the sand, saying North American feedstock only, and that's how it's going to be. So, big winner in that, of course, is Canadian canola and Canadian beef tallow. That's some of the biggest imported feedstocks, at least by getting rid of Chinese used cooking oil. That now remains kind of the biggest foreign feedstock impact that we're going to see. And again, the key issue on all this was Chinese used cooking oil that may or may not have actually been used cooking oil. But the big winner here, of course, is now without foreign feedstock coming in, it drives more demand for our domestic feedstock, more value for U.S. farmers. So definitely a good win. And they had to draw the line in the sand somewhere. That before it was open to anybody. Now it is feedstock's got to be from North America. This should be a solid impact on our U.S. crops. Another impact or another change that was made is basically to ignore indirect land use change, or ILUC, you'll see it called. Previously, indirect land use change made multiple points towards your biofuel CI score. On corn, for example, it was like 7 point something points. So if you're if your ethanol has a CI score of like 52, about seven of those points were coming from indirect land use change. So instead of now being at a 52, now you're at a 45. So they say the updated version here in the Big Beautiful Bill is to ignore indirect land use change, not give a just one size fits all penalty for that. It definitely helps corn and corn-based ethanol by a couple points, which is great. But it really helps on the soybean side as well. So part of the argument from the soybean side of things was, well, hey, if you're going to allow for foreign feedstocks, at least ignore this concept of indirect land use change. That would make the soybeans more competitive. And like I showed in the last slide, in this one, soybeans got both. So basically, what this does is it lowers every biofuel producer. It lowers their CI score across the board. So now, if you were above a score of 50 before, and keep in mind a CI score of 50, that's the magic number. You got to get below 50, and for every point you get below 50, that's where you can earn the 45Z credits. So if you were slightly above 50 before, now you're likely below 50 and ready to rock and roll out the gate. If you were far away from 50, like there's some ethanol plants that had CI scores close to 60 previously or even higher, now you lower your CI score by ignoring indirect land use change. Now you're likely in striking distance to get your CI score below 50. So this is really going to help just get the program off and running early. There was a lot of biofuel producers that were really going to need a carbon capture system to make major CI reductions. And now this ignoring indirect land use change helps everybody get closer to 50 or maybe even below. Now, if you have carbon capture or put in a pipeline system, that lowers your CI score by about 32 points in the 45Z CF GREET model, which was released by the previous administration and is still named as the tool to be utilized for 45Z. So if you have carbon capture, that's great. It lowers your score tremendously. But now ignoring indirect land use change is going to help a lot of producers be able to just tag team with their farmers and be able to monetize this credit quite quickly. So it's definitely a good one, a good win for all producers in the U.S. here across the board. Last piece of major change that happened last week is that they locked in that these tax credits will be transferable. So uh, previously, the credits were transferable in the Inflation Reduction Act. Then, when there was chatter about extending the 45Z program, some versions of the bill were saying, okay, we'll extend the program, but you're not going to be able to transfer the tax credits. They got rid of that. They said, no, we're going to extend the 45Z program and you can transfer the tax credits. This is a big, big deal to ensure that the 45Z credits remain at their full value. So here's what this means. If you have a local ethanol plant that is a farmer owned, a co-op ethanol plant, right? That the farmers own it, the ethanol plant doesn't pay its own corporate income tax. Instead, the tax liability is passed on to the members, typically on a K1. And so the dividend checks are passed on to the members, the tax liability is passed on to the members end up paying the taxes. The biofuel producer doesn't pay their own federal income tax, it gets passed on. So then if you were creating 45Z credits and you weren't paying your own federal income tax, there may not be much of an opportunity to monetize those tax credits, or it would be really funky if you had to pass it all on to your members, and it would just be more difficult. So what was locked in here last week is saying, no, you can produce the tax credits, then you can sell them in the secondary market. And at our Topsoil Summit this year, we had folks there from Mickelson and Co. They're one of the groups that is helping to broker these types of tax credits. So biofuel producers can work with a tax credit broker or with a tax credit buyer to purchase their tax credits that they aren't going to directly use themselves. Now, if you're a major, if you're a oil and gas company that owns ethanol plants, you likely have a big tax liability on your own. You can create the 45Z credits and utilize them dollar for dollar to offset your own taxes. If you have more credits than what you need because you're overcame your tax liability, or you don't pay federal income tax. Now you can take your credits and sell them in the secondary market at a discount for sure. Likely, being able to sell these tax credits for 90, maybe 92, 94 cents on the dollar, somewhere in there. It all takes data. And a really key one on this, I get, pushback and criticism all the time. I'm like, who's going to regulate this? And how many IRS agents are we going to need? And who's going to be overseeing all this stuff? Well, that really sorts itself out when if you're a biofuel producer and you've got to sell these tax credits in the secondary market, you're selling to an extremely sophisticated tax credit buyer. You have to go through the rigor and the rigmarole of that transfer and that sale process. There's a tremendous amount of audit and scrutiny that's going to be put on that biofuel producer who wants to sell these tax credits. The buyer of the tax credit, they're ultimately now going to utilize the financial value to offset their taxes. They are going to be reporting to the IRS that they purchased these tax credits and therefore they're lowering their tax liability. Those folks are going to be audited by the IRS and they get audited all the time and they have their own internal audit teams and whatnot. So these sophisticated tax credit buyers, they are going to be putting these biofuel producers through a tremendous amount of scrutiny if they're going to buy their tax credits. That's going to be passed on to the supply chain and passed on to the farmers that the system's really going to sort itself out. I think that these buyers of the tax credits, they are not going to want to take on the liability of having the tax credit that may or may not be accurate or may be fraudulent and whatnot. They are not going to do that. So they are going to ensure that these tax credits are not fraudulent and that they don't end up getting in trouble with the IRS. That's going to really clean up this entire system, I believe. So, um, okay, we got questions starting to come in. I appreciate that. Toss your questions in. How do you think the reduction of the federal tax credit for corn, ethanol derived sustainable aviation fuel, we call it alcohol to jet or ethanol to jet, from $1.50 a gallon down to $1 a gallon under the Big Beautiful Bill, combined with new restrictions on feedstock sourcing, stricter life cycle emissions, technical eligibility changes will affect the pace, innovation, and market expansion, specifically within alcohol to SAF. So actually, it went from $1.75 per gallon down to $1. So what this anonymous attendee is asking for is that the SAF used to be looking at a 45Z credit up to $1.75. Ethanol, biodiesel, renewable diesel, its maximum credit was $1. Under the Big Beautiful Bill, now everything's $1. They got rid of this premium for SAF. That really is going to hinder the ability to take your ethanol and turn it into sustainable aviation fuel. Under the current version of 45Z, the alcohol to jet pathway, not going to happen. Not at any type of real pace, not at any type of accelerated rate of innovation. The math just doesn't work out. I don't want to go into all the details, but you'd be much better off under the current 45Z rules to just produce ethanol, sell it as ethanol, get the 45Z credit, and not turn it into SAF. Senator Joni Ernst here from Iowa has an amendment that did not end up making it in the votorama, but likely, could be included at some point later. Senator Ernst's amendment would say that an ethanol producer can earn the 45Z credit and the SAF producer can earn the 45Z credit. Until that comes in, alcohol to jet is just not going to happen. So SAF was definitely the major loser. I think I have that actually in here, and Craig, getting to your question here too on what do farmers need to do now. I've got let me go through the rest of these slides and I'll turn them off. The 45Z impact here. Obviously, it's already impacting the corn and soybean market. We saw soybeans reacting last week because of soy oil prices reacting to 45Z. I think this is going to ensure that we do have some strong markets, especially with good local um, demand. So that's good. Again, on the SAF side, we were just talking about it. SAF is an opportunity long term, but under these current changes and rules, SAF was kind of a loser in this deal. It definitely took a couple steps backwards, but an amendment like Senator Ernst's amendment to allow for the ethanol producer and the SAF producer to get the credit, that would absolutely fix the problem. And the overall 45Z impact is ag data is extremely valuable. Again, it's setting a precedent as to the value of farmer data. I believe, basically how this works is the farmers are farming their crop in a way that is lowering the carbon intensity versus the default. And in order for the ethanol plant to generate the 45Z credit using your low carbon farming practices, they have to prove it. They have to go through an audit and likely an audit at every point of aggregation. So that farmer data is really the key to unlock value here. I think that's what's going to ensure that there's an equitable share of the financial value. And I just see nothing but abundance here that that there's plenty of money to go around for the farmers, the grain elevators, the biofuel producers, plenty of money for everybody in this. And I really think we've got to make sure that there is transparency and equitable share if we want this program to really rock and roll. Really, really critical thing. I've got Paul Neiffer on. Maybe I'll come back to him in a minute. And I want to get Paul Neiffer, the farm CPA, is going to give us a couple insights about some of the other impact of the big beautiful bill. But of course, 45Z was huge, but there's multiple other provisions in the big beautiful bill that are really important for farmers. So make sure that you're educating yourself. No, elimination of death tax. That the estate tax exemption is locked in up to $15 million. Research and development tax credits. You can now take all of that research and development tax credit in 1 year. It used to have to be amortized over time. And we've got a partner that we are working with to get these R&D tax credits. I think this is going to be a big deal for a lot of our farmers, especially if you are using any type of new to you hybrid, adding cover crop, changing fertilizer, whatever. All of that can qualify as research and development. There more info to come on that, a bigger farm safety net, things under the Title I program, secure CSP and EQIP funding, multiple things that are key impact for farmers. Let me get to last couple pieces here, and Paul, I want to get your take, and we'll get some questions going. So some of the next steps. If you are a biofuel producer, it's time to rock and roll. 45Z is locked in. We don't know all the details, but you got to get something going to educate your farmers, gather your current CI baseline, gather the farmer data, start working on contracts with farmers to actually purchase the full data. So gathering the farmer baseline CI scores, I'm talking just gathering just their high level, not audited, anticipated CI scores. That can be done very easily, very minimal dollars. Contracting with farmers to actually purchase their CI certificate or their biofuel feedstock reports. That's ultimately the full thorough data that you're going to need. So you need to get a plan put together for that. You need to prepare for the ISO 14065 audit. All signs are pointing towards that is going to be the audit protocol used. It's the one that we developed our MRV protocol around and actually put 29 million bushels through. It can absolutely be done. It's not super expensive. Biofuel producers, you need to be ready for these audits and you need to lock in what software systems you're going to be utilizing. Um, our play is to integrate with the biofuel producer's existing software. This does not need to be reinventing the wheel, and there's solutions to really help make this work. Educating everybody involved to the fullest extent that we can. And I think as a biofuel producer right now, you got to be ready for this program to be mass balance, meaning at a minimum, work with the farmers who already sold you crop or are going to sell you crop. Because if it's mass balance, that's the only option you're going to have. The data and the crops stay together under mass balance. This could end up going book and claim, but in that case, biofuel producer, you'd already have your local farmers rocking and rolling with you, capitalize with those farmers that are selling you crop, and then you could fill in the gaps with the book and claim if need be. But biofuel producers, it's absolutely time to get things rolling. There's already many biofuel producers that have been implementing programs and would love to chat with you about that. If you're a grain aggregator, an elevator co-op that's selling into a biofuel producer, you got to be rock and rolling here too, especially if this ends up remaining mass balance. You have a critical role to play. So grain aggregators, talk to your biofuel producer, figure out what they want you to do, figure out what systems they're using, what softwares. and communicate with your farmers as well to gather the data from them. You need to know what their CI scores are. You got to help them undergo these audits and create their CI certificates. I'd be looking at rolling out a 45Z program to gather that farmer CI data, contract with those farmers to actually work with them to purchase that ag data. You got to verify the bushels at every point of aggregation. Especially if this is mass balance, every single step along the chain got to undergo an audit. We got to have traceability and tracking that farm data. So get ready. And farmers, of course, communicate with your biofuel producer, communicate with your grain buyer if you're selling to a co-op, or even selling into livestock and stuff. They need to be educated. I'm happy to have those conversations with them. We don't know all of the final details yet, but this is absolutely happening. It is going forward. It is locked in. You need to be ready to roll. So, and farmer, at a minimum, know what your CI score is, and it's free. It doesn't take very long either. We do it at topsoil.ag for free, or Google the GREET model and go and get your CI score. Just know what you're dealing with, understand how it works. The full GREET model is pretty complicated. That's why we simplified it. And you own your data in our system. So be prepared that you're going to have to verify your CI scores field by field. That's how this is going to work. Now, the data may be aggregated at a farm level. It may remain field by field. We don't know, but regardless, you got to have scores field by field. You got to have your agronomic data field by field, and you got to undergo these audits, whether it be undergo the audits proactively, like what we've been doing under our CI certification program, or you're it's going to be required by the grain buyer, by the ethanol plant. So you're going to have to go through the audit at some point. We are proactively doing it, and today we are turning back on our CI certification program. It's $7 an acre, which is 2, 3 cents a bushel. It's not a huge cost, but there's significant cost on our side. We got to gather all this data, have the people to help you do it, undergo a third-party audit. There's plenty of work that needs to be done, but by spreading out the workload, it's really not that big of a deal. And again, we did 29 million bushels from the 2024 crop. Absolutely can be done. So just figure out what your game plan is going to be to get audited. Um, and whether it be farmer, you pay the bill for it, or your grain buyer pays the bill for it, doesn't really matter. Again, it's not super expensive to go through this and can absolutely be done at scale. Now, keep in mind, if your 2024 crop went into biofuel, you better be getting that old data pulled together, uh, get it ready for audit because that old 2024 crop is still subject to this credit. And then also you got to be thinking about 2025 and think about where is your crop going to be sold to come this fall or come over the winter or next year if you're storing it, and be ready to capitalize on your 2024 crop. Um, Keep in mind here too that I really think that this is going to impact beyond biofuels. So be talking with even if you're selling into a pork supply chain like I am, or selling into other export markets and whatnot. Like they need to be looking at 45Z and understanding, what type of opportunity could they go after by mimicking off of this program. So farmers, get your data put together. CI certification is back on, and that's really the ultimate way. You need to know your scores, understand your data, get it verified, and communicate with your buyers to make sure that they are in cahoots here. Last thing here, remaining unknowns. We don't yet know if it's going to be mass balance or book and claim. The IRS rules are going to come out with that. If you are selling into biofuels, it's a slam dunk because either one, you're good to go. So, especially if you sold your crop into the biofuel supply chain, you gotta rock and roll. This is locked in now, and so get things going there. If you didn't sell into biofuels, be ready. It could end up being book and claim. You can kind of continue to wait, but at least get your data organized. That is critical. If you want anything out of these programs as a biofuel producer, as a elevator, as a farmer, you've got to have data. That is the number one thing. We don't yet know exactly what calculator is going to be used. We're ready for either one. We have both the GREET model and the USDA model in our system. We're ready for either one. We would prefer the GREET model, but farmers gather your data once in a program like ours, and we'll get the correct calculation done. Simple, simple on the farmer side. We've got to finalize the MRV protocols as well. There may be some adjustments made by government, but the USDA already put out their proposed MRV protocol, and it's basically it's exactly in line with what Continuum already did. It's not that challenging, but there are some potential updates to be made, and uh, and then it's basically how are the farmers and biofuel producers going to like collaborate and what's the dollar sharing and stuff? That's all unknown. You're gonna have to communicate with your local ethanol plant, and there's things that got to be sorted out here in order to understand how the financial sharing is going to work. But um, like I said, you can get your CI scores for free in our platform, or just Google this stuff and do your research, figure out how it's going to work for you. But anyway, Paul, I appreciate you hopping on early out in your neck of the woods. Any thoughts, any additional insights from you, Paul Nee for the Farm CPA?
Yeah, actually, Mitchell, I was going to ask you a couple questions. I
Yeah,
noticed in the bill it indicated that you can't, I'm assuming it's the biofuel producer can't have a negative CI score.
yeah.
I guess the question I have is, once you go down to zero, you get no more benefit for having negative. Why was that put in? Do you have any
I think it's
ideas on
just to
that?
clarify. Yeah, so there is a provision put in there that you can't have your CI score go below zero. And yeah, my interpretation of the text was that is specifically for the biofuel producer claiming the credit. You can't
Yeah,
claim a credit with a CI score lower than zero, and that really just points back to it's maxed out at $1.
yeah, yeah,
Right. That's the key. It clarifies that the 45Z credit is maxed out at $1. So once you get a CS score all the way down to zero, now you're maxed out. But the only way you would do that is if you have carbon capture that's lowering your CI by 32 points, and you get basically 100% participation from your farmers.
yeah,
It's nobody's going to hit a CI
yeah,
score of zero. I don't even know that they would, as far nobody's going to hit a CI score of zero anytime soon, even by 2029.
yeah.
And
But
if you are
then it
maximizing it, then we move on to the next things.
But then it did add in that, we're talking about manure scores, swine, cattle, et
Yeah.
cetera, that actually can go negative. So could I guess a producer, biofuel producer add in that and maybe get some help there? I
Maybe,
mean,
but I think those are for more green methanol and some of those other
it,
potential transportation fuels, not
yeah,
necessarily ethanol, biodiesel, right? It's kind of
it,
a different angle there.
it was just curious on that. I guess I think you probably just want me to share some of the
Yeah, any
other.
of your thoughts and updates, or
Yeah.
especially with just high level a message to the farmers?
Yeah, I think for me the high level is I give this bill actually a B plus. I think it's a pretty good bill. You're looking at probably an extra 10 billion of payments going out next October, November of next year related to ARC and PLC. Also, a lot of the people on this call probably are farming as an LLC or an S corporation. You had some artificial restraints on the payment limits. Those have been removed. The we have permanent estate tax level at 15 million starting next year, indexed to inflation. We have permanent Section 199 Cap A, that extra 20% deduction. And then I think for a lot of farmers out there, they're going to love the fact that 100% bonus depreciation is reinstated as of January 20th of this year, and it's permanent. And Section 179 will be at the $2.5 million level. I thought that was going to be for 26, but it's actually for 25. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of good benefits in this bill. Certainly, I guess I'll tout my blog, farmcpareport.com, if people want to get more details on that. I've been doing some webinars on it. So there's a lot of good stuff in this bill.
Last other quick question for you. In my mind, securing the elimination of death tax, the $15 million estate tax exemption, to me, those seem like huge deals for multi-generation family farms like mine. Is there anything that farmers need to be thinking about today or, within estate planning to
Well, I think
they
a
don't
lot of
screw
farmers
those things
probably
up.
were planning on making some major gifts between now and the end of the year. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Unless, if you're worth 60, 70, 80 million or higher, which these days in certain areas is not that many acres,
Sure.
then you probably were still making those gifts no matter what. But for the typical farm family out there that's farming two, three, four, five, 6,000 acres, you don't have to worry about the federal estate tax. Now, if you live in Minnesota or Illinois or Washington or Oregon, you got to worry about the state estate tax. So that is something you have to worry about there.
Mm. But definitely all good. Seems like a lot of good things here. Obviously, we got to see
Yes.
how some of this is going to shape up. But hopefully everyone's excited overall. I know we sure are. It sounds like you are too, Paul. Given a B plus rating, that seems high because you got very rigorous standards. I know. So
Yeah.
so that's good. Appreciate you hopping on here, Paul. Let me crank out a couple of questions, and if you've got comments, you can definitely jump in. I'll try to crank through because there's a bunch of them here. Craig, what do farmers need to do now? I think hopefully got that answered for you, right? Know your CI score, get CI certification going. Whether it be you're going to do it proactively, working with somebody like Continuum, or talk with your grain buyer. Maybe they'll help cover it, pay for it for you. But it's all boils down to the data. BJ on the carbon pipeline and dilemmas here. I can't fully speak to this. He's asking about, is it going to be resolved outside of court or drawn on through the courts and stuff? I don't know. I do think it's going to be a long slug
Uh,
ahead for
yeah,
the pipelines.
it's going to be after 29 before we ever see a pipeline.
I
So
I would have to think so as well. Now, there's some places like the tall grass pipeline in Nebraska. Some of those are likely going to be moving forward very quickly. So, Summit Carbon Solutions still long way to go. But um, tall grass, some of these others, they're going to be likely moving forward very, very quickly. There's multiple other ethanol plants who have their own direct,
yeah,
carbon capture systems and pump it straight down as well. Diane asking about farmer premiums and biofuel producers saying that it's going to be limited because of high cost. I've spoken with over 100 ethanol plants. Most of them are talking about sharing somewhere between a third and half of the money with the farmer, and that's really going to boil down to the data and the value that they are looking to attain based on your CI score. So, and I think where we can eliminate this burden of costs and stuff for the ethanol plant is if the farmer already has verified CI certificates, it doesn't necessarily have to be re-audited. The auditor at the ethanol plant can accept your already verified CI certificate and not have to undergo an additional level of audit because it's already been audited. And that's why we're working with a reputable third-party auditor like Eco Engineers that everybody in the biofuel space knows, and all these auditors know them and they have a good reputation. So if your ethanol plant is undergoing a lot of issues there with cost and whatnot, would love to chat with them. Like I said, and what we have undergone so far, the cost to audit and verify this stuff, a couple cents a bushel, 2, 3 cents a bushel, and it's $7 an acre. It's not that big of a deal for the value that can come from 45Z. And if they're struggling with other software or other management costs, they we need to have a conversation because this should not be a huge burden, and there should be plenty of money to go around. But I think of the total pie, that ethanol plant is going to retain at least a third, maybe half of the money themselves. So and there's going to be some significant costs in this. Everyone needs to make some money, and I think these biofuel producers can make some serious cash in this as well. And there's way more abundance here than we should be going about this with an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset. That's really going to be critical. And so, happy to be part of any of those conversations and provide stories of here's where it's really working well. Thoughts on the SAF tax credits? Michigan last week, in addition to some others, are in the works, stacked with the current 45Z. Do you believe this moves the needle for SAF? Potentially. It's really going to take those state tax credits to move the needle on SAF. Again, 45Z, because they reduce the money from a max of $1.75 down to a max of $1. and the alcohol to jet pathway is just not going to be incentivized under the current 45Z rules. SAF is going to take some more policy to really get that ramp back up and going. Diane, something else has been said that nothing's carved in stone until November. Is that your understanding? No, that's not necessarily true. So, in November, that'd be an arbitrary thing. So, the 45Z rules or the 45Z program has been locked in through 2029. I believe what you're referring to is we still do need final IRS guidance, but nobody knows exactly when that's going to
Yeah.
come. My concern here is this is a 2025 program. So if you're going to have your data put together and submitting it on your 2025 tax return come April, you better get your crap together. Now, of course, a lot of people will file for extensions. That's absolutely going to be the norm, I assume, for
Yes.
at least this first year. But regardless, if you're extending till later in 2026 to file your 2025 return, you still only have 12, 15 months, even in that case. So you got to get your ducks in a row now. And we know enough about the 45Z program that some adjustments to the rules, they make a big impact, but then be conservative on that. And again, that's why I'm saying, well, then plan on mass balance because that's worst case scenario within mass balance versus book and claim. Book and claim would be better, but plan on mass balance. Plan on a lower CI score than coming because of a not great CI calculator. If they go with the USDA calculator instead of the Greek calculator. So just plan on, lower case scenario and then capitalize if it's better. There's not going to be a bunch of money moving anytime soon. And I think everyone needs to understand that the money is not yet flowing. There may be small amounts, very, very small, pennies on the dollar, just to get things started, to get farmers enrolled. But this did not unlock the floodgates. We've known that for a long time. What this did is it locked in. 45Z is here. It is here to stay. We've already seen Secretary Bassett, the Secretary of Treasury, talking very positively about 45Z. I know that they're going to get these rules out as fast as they can and as robust as they can. But regardless, we have got to get some movement going because there's a lot of work ahead to gather all this data and get people ready. I'm just gonna keep hammering, Paul. You just jump in if you've got
Well,
it.
and I think also a lot of these details are really effective in 2026. So the problem with that is it gives IRS an extra year to sort of diddle along. So
Yeah,
I mean, we do have to be concerned
yeah.
that this may not be a priority for the IRS. They've lost a lot of staff. So it may take some extra time before we get really good guidance on this.
Yeah, the issue is we don't know when that's going to be,
Yeah.
and it's we cannot just continue to sit and wait, and especially that I think the risk here is just it's so minimal of a risk for such a massive upside
Yeah.
that it does not take that much to at least get the ball rolling. Josh, good to have you on this morning, man. Are there any indications on book and match, I mean book and claim, or look backs on 2024 if it's already been sold? No, no indication on book and claim versus mass balance. But since the program still is in regards to 2025 biofuel production, we've got to be factoring in 2024 crop. I mean, even as we sit here today in July, obviously there's no 2025 crop that's been turned into biofuel yet. It's all 2024 crop. So that is absolutely still subject. So you got to be looking at 2024 crop and get ready for 2025. And Walter and others ask about this. Why did it not make it in the bill? That's not necessarily the role of Congress here to make the actual rules in regards to the details of the 45Z program. They've leave that up to the executive branch to actually write the rules. It's the job of Congress to go through the funding mechanisms and those type of things, right? And the length of the program and how much money they're going to allocate to programs. They're setting the budget. It's the executive branch that's got to go and finalize the rules. But Zach, can I go to my local ethanol plant I sold corn to in January of 2025 from the 2024 crop, get a premium, or is that system not ready yet? The system's not necessarily ready yet. You're not going to get a check for your CI data, at least very minimum. We got to keep our expectations clear here. What you need to do is saying, hey, ethanol plant, I'm really excited about this 45Z thing. I want to work together to both get some benefit on this thing. I want to partner with you and we go after this. You cannot go into your ethanol plant saying, "Hey, you got 45Z, give me a check." That is not how this works. They are not getting money yet from the 45Z program. What the ethanol plant got was clarity that this is going to happen. It did get locked in, it got extended. Now they can start figuring it out and get to work on a program. So, Zach, for you and many other farmers listening to this, if you already sold corn to the ethanol plant for your 2024 crop that's going into 2025 biofuel, you just need to make them aware that you've got low carbon corn. You should know what your CI score is. And again, we can do that for you for free. Better is to say, hey, I'm going to have a third party audited under these ISO standards that you're going to need. I'll avoid I'll help you to avoid the risk and liability on your side by proving to you what my CI score is. That's going to put you in best position to capitalize here. So the money's not going to be flowing yet, but your 2024 crop that you sold in 2025, absolutely at play here. And you need to have your data put together so that you and the biofuel producer can capitalize. On a one scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a huge setback, 10 being start laying pipe now, how will this affect CO2 pipeline projects? I mean, this definitely incentivizes CO2 pipeline projects to get going. They have a couple extra years to get it done, and it's big, big money. So, I mean, this definitely moves them forward. Now, Paul, I didn't read into all the details of it, but I believe they cut back the 45Q program. Are you familiar with that piece or looked in that?
A little bit, and again, I'm sort of like you, haven't dug into it. I know they restricted the foreign ownership. They made restrictions on there, but I haven't had a chance to dig into that one that much. I mean, I'm not dealing with anybody that's doing a 45Q type project, so that wasn't a high priority for me.
So if you already have a carbon capture system or a pipeline, 45Z gives you the full speed ahead to go and capitalize on it.
Yeah,
You've got a couple years to do it. That's the key. 45Q is for carbon capture and sequestration only. It was kind of the fallback program.
yeah.
And previously it was due to sunset after 2032, I believe. I haven't talked about this too much here recently, but I believe they did cut that back. It's going to sunset quicker. So it hurts kind of the safety net and the fallback program for carbon capture and pipelines, but they will definitely still keep moving forward. Can you give your impression on where climate smart practices stand? You mentioned carbon capture is still important, but the last model recommendation minimize considerations of nutrient management. Yeah, so we don't know all the details on the climate smart practices yet, but I mean, keep in mind they made changes to indirect land use change. They made direct ruling on foreign feedstock and keeping foreign feedstock out of the program. Clearly, the intent of Congress here is to have the feedstock included, corn, soybeans, or otherwise. Absolutely still moving forward. We know that USDA has this as a super high priority. We know that the IRS wants to ensure that this is good for farmers. So it's still moving forward. And regardless, it's gather all your agronomic data about cover crop, tillage, fertilizer, manure, yields, planting, gather all of that info, be ready. We can put it on the USDA model or the GREET model. Likely still some updates to come, but we don't know here yet today. So at a minimum, get your data organized. Now you're in position for whatever happens. Last couple, I'll try to keep cranking through as many of these like as I can. Alexa, I gotta,
What one question is,
yeah.
why did the Senate drop it from $1.75 to a dollar?
Hmm.
I think probably maybe to save a little bit of money on budget, or a little bit of push from the fuel producers,
Yeah.
because we were getting some negative talk from the oil and gas side, so maybe that was sort of a compromise.
Yeah, probably a little pushback from the big oil guys. I'm
Yeah,
assuming they're
yeah.
right. But it looks like there's some interest in fixing SAF in the future, just not today. Jeff, does my sales score have to be tied to the physical bushels, or can I market my score again? That's the mass balance or book and claim. We don't know. Plan on mass balance. Plan on your corn and the data being tied together. That's kind of, again, worst case scenario. Then if it's book and claim, it's awesome. Game on. Then anybody can participate. But at least for now, if you're selling into biofuel, you got to rock and roll. If you're not selling into biofuel, get your data organized, but you might sit on the sidelines to an extent. Do you see this model being used for fodder and feeding operations? I think that's where I talk about the ripple effect, right? So the ripple effect that this 45Z program can have on animal ag, absolutely can see it going that route. If you're in animal ag, you need to be talking with folks in your supply chain, your industry groups and stuff, saying, how are we going to capitalize on this program that's setting a precedent that we can utilize to our advantage? Determine feedstock calculators. Nope. I think we got through that. Not sure yet on the feedstock calculator. We're ready for either one. And it takes the same data on the farmer side. Farmers, it's all the same. So be ready either way. Can you capitalize on this if you enter TrueTerra or something like those programs? Great question. They did not directly rule on that, but in previous guidance under these similar programs, IRS has said no, you cannot be in a private carbon credit program and be in the 45Z or carbon intensity program. The key is you're counting the same practices or the same carbon impact twice. You can't double count. So unfortunately, until final rules, I wouldn't tell you to just go and unenroll and everything. But if you're considering signing up for a program, I think you really got to pump the brakes and determine what's going to be better for your operation. Um, Happy to have those conversations more, or chat with some of my guys that can walk you through it. But uh, plan on no double counting, no double dipping in a private program and a 45Z program. Timeline for IRS settle the rest of these unknowns, no idea. Unfortunately, and that's again like we can't sit and wait for final IRS rules. We know enough to move the next steps forward, doing it in a de-risked system, cheap, make sure that we're ready to rock and roll. Because every day, filing day to file your taxes gets closer and closer. So we got to be ready. Can the feedstock be negative under the rules? Am I understanding that correctly? Yeah, so the feedstock can be negative. The total fuel at the end of the day cannot. Meaning, once you hit the dollar a gallon, you can't earn more than a dollar a gallon. But negative feedstock is tremendous. If you've got a CS score negative, like my soybeans last year were massively negative, that is a huge, tremendous value here. But yeah, no, the negative component was talking about the fuel, not necessarily the feedstock. Maybe a question for Paul. Why the Senate? Oh, you already got that one.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good looking ahead there, Paul. What sort of implementation models have you heard for the funding getting to the farmer from the biofuel producer? When should the farmer anticipate needing to sign contracts? When would the money move? Who needs to be staffing up to make sure this can be implemented? Leaf, great questions there. So that's ultimately going to be between the farmer and the biofuel producer. In some of the previous guidance, there was this concept of Appendix B, which is that when a farmer signs a contract for their crop, they would have the Appendix B, which is to sell the biofuel feedstock report. There was a example of this provided by, I believe it was USDA, not IRS. I think it was in the USDA stuff that was provided under the Biden administration, where essentially think of it as farmer is selling their corn, farmers also selling their data, and they're signing an appendix to their contract to sell that data. Now, it's ultimately between the farmer and the biofuel producer of what the price for that is going to be. And it's going to be a mechanism based on what your CI score is and some of that still to be worked out. There's a biofuel producer that for conversation and as an example, this biofuel producer in Illinois, they are paying 2.5 cents per CI point reduced per bushel. The average for the ethanol plant is that the value is under 45Z, the value averages 5.8 cents per point reduced per bushel. Now there's some rounding and there's some stuff, and that's an average number. Okay, don't come after me. But average to the ethanol plant, 5.8 cents per point per bushel. This producer in Illinois already had a program paying out farmers on a small scale pilot basis, 2.5 cents per point per bushel. So about half of the money to the farmer, maybe a little less. I think we're going to see a lot of that, but there's a lot of systems that are going to be needed here. I think it may take an extra person at the ethanol plant, but I don't think this is going to be a huge burden. We're already working with other software companies and stuff that are already working with ethanol plants to help ease this. If it goes book and claim and it's on an open public, a open securities exchange, it's really going to simplify this process. But I really don't think it's going to end up being that much bigger of of a burden to the ethanol plants or to the farmers. But again, we've got to create some systems here. And ultimately, by 45Z getting locked in, now we can aggressively move forward to finalize the software systems, finalize the contractual process, and be ready to rock and roll. But it's
So,
still going to be, again, there may be small payments going to farmers to lock in so that you don't leave and go to a different program, for example, or you don't sign that carbon credit program. The ethanol plant may want to develop some type of a contract with you to get you locked into their program, so that they have certainty. But major money, it's still
so,
months away from moving.
so Mitchell, in your that example there, 2.5 cents per bush or per point. So if they were able to drop it by 20 points, that's 50 cents per bushel. If it's 30 points, it's 75 cents per bushel. I mean, essentially, that's the type of dollar amounts that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's essentially it. We've got some ability to help calculate that for you on topsoil. Just plan on again what we know today is the full value of the 45Z credit. The farmer's going to get an equitable portion of that. You need to know what your score is, know what the value of it is. Do not be greedy in this. You're not going to get 75 cents on the dollar.
No,
That is
no.
not going to happen. Everyone here has got to make some money in this, and there's plenty of money to go around. Again, happy to have those conversations. And I'll be pushing hard on a lot of our ethanol plants that we have relationships with and try to get some things rolled out in a good manner. David, what are the chances of getting credit for 2024 crop not yet sold? Extremely high, but plan on selling that crop to an ethanol plant, whether it be direct or via a grain aggregator. But no, that 2024 crop is absolutely still at play, but plan on selling it to an ethanol plant. In regards to standardization of 45Z credit to a dollar for all fuel types, how does this uniquely impact farmers of varying crops and corresponding fuels across the spectrum of ethanol, oilseeds, SAF? Not that much, to be honest. I think the mass majority of our crops here was going to be corn or soybeans going to ethanol or biodiesel. It didn't change any of that. The alcohol to jet pathway, that's what got hurt. But by the time that increased dollar value got kind of trickled down to the farmer, it really isn't going to make that big of an impact anyway. So it's a huge deal for the SAF producers, but for the farmer piece, it's not that big.
Yeah, yeah. The farmer really wasn't going to get more whether it went to SAP or not.
Yeah, no. R&D tax credits, a big opportunity. I know, Paul, you're deep into this as well. It's things like if you are doing practices on your farm that would qualify as research and development. So you are trying a new hybrid of corn. You are experimenting with a new cover crop seed blend. You're trying a new fertilizer, a new biological, any new practice or new to you practice that can qualify as research. And then the expenses that go into that can qualify as research and development expense. And they just got rid of the amortization schedule here under the
As far
update
as the deduction, yeah, yeah,
for the deduction.
yeah.
So you used to have to deduct the R&D credit over time. Now you can deduct all of it in 1 year. It's a big opportunity, especially if you're farming 500 acres or more, 1,000 acres, and you're trying new hybrids and stuff. It's a big opportunity. So we'll get some more info out about it later.
Mitch, I gotta let you know I got a call that I need to leave
Yep.
for, so
Paul,
I'm gonna
appreciate
have to leave.
you hopping on. We will obviously have some more conversation. Paul has given us some great insight before. Paul, have a great day. Appreciate you hopping on.
Thanks,
Yep.
Mitchell. Bye
See
bye.
ya. I'm going to take just a handful more questions. We got a ton of them on here. Still a couple hundred people on the chat as well. Believe maybe Diana, get me a note here, but I believe all of these questions will be captured, and maybe we should let everyone go. Uh, okay, last one here on the livestock piece. This is a big deal. So let's see if I can do this. Okay, last kind of thing. I'll answer this last question, but um, tremendous amount of opportunity moving forward here for 45Z farmers. CI certification is where we can help you. Biofuel producers, same type of thing. It all boils down to the data. I'll continue to do our chit chats Tuesday mornings at 7:45. Um, Probably not gonna be able to do tomorrow, so we haven't decided on it yet, but I'm gonna be in North Carolina. Can be back to keep answering your questions. But hit me up, my team. You can contact us through Topsoil or send me a note. The last question was about farmers that sell into livestock markets, use the grain for feed themselves. This is a huge, huge deal. I do think biofuel, or if you're a livestock farmer, I want to have a one-on-one conversation with you and walk you through how this can work. If it's mass balance, you may need to figure out how to get some of your corn and your data connected to an ethanol plant. It's going to take a little funkiness to it. If it's book and claim, it's great. The data and the crop are decoupled. Amazing opportunity for livestock producers. But for right now, we need to have strategy talks. If you are feeding your grain yourself, or if you are a livestock producer, I believe that there's going to be opportunity for you to capitalize on this. But you could absolutely be disrupted by this program if you don't get ahead of it. So that uh, we need to have some conversations there. So, okay, a bunch of questions, but I got to stop because I got to go catch a flight. Appreciate everyone being on. Happy to take more questions at any point. And thanks everyone for joining here today. Have a great day, and we will catch you here next time.